Hi folks, I'm Collin and I'm gonna make a TNO-esque icon for Realm of Ash and the MTM frame. So firstly, I grabbed a frame and the color lookups from the icon that I'm gonna make for the tree, and you know, let's start. So I already pre-prepped my assets that I'm gonna use, but let's do this methodically first. See, now you're gonna have to have the images that you're gonna use as a smart object, or else when you need to move it back and forth, for example, or like resize it up and down, it doesn't lose its image quality. Plus, when you're gonna need to adjust some effects, you're gonna need it to be smart objects, so the state is saved. So what I'm gonna do first is gonna use camera raw to increase increase the crispness and the uh, texture of the asset. Though you shouldn't go too heavy with dehaze because it makes the asset look too crusty. So, so that looks a bit too much, but let me look at it with my effects first. Now I'll be saving a PSD in the description. I'll be linking it down there just in case that you want to use it. But okay, this now if you wanna use VFX for later, just select an asset that has the effects and then click new style and then save it as whatever you'd like. There we go. Now VFX is a bit too much in this one, so I'm gonna readjust it. Really, the thing with icon making is it's full of trial and error. So be patient with whatever you're doing. Really. I think yeah, that looks fine. Now, shift click to put the thing into a folder. It's important that you put it into a folder because when you're gonna erase it, it will erase all the effects and it'd look proper as compared to when you put a layer mask on it. You know, the effects don't really go away, so it looks weird. Alright, now I'm gonna begin shading, which is like one of the most important aspects in the style that we use in Ramavash as well as the yet to be teased MTM. So we gotta wait for that. Now I have my brush settings on 40% opacity and the flow on 50%, and hardness 0. You can differ on the size file, it doesn't really matter. Also, if you want to increase the brush size easily, just hold Alt, right click, and then drag left and right to change the size of the brush you're using. So now, for example, the lighting is coming through the right direction, so I'm gonna make the shadows be on the left. Shading is not as complicated as it seems, really. It just takes some practice to get right. No, I don't really shade the highlights in because typically the images already have bright enough parts that they stand out on their own. So I just prefer to shade the shadows. That's why I technically do. Oh, wait, I almost forgot. Now I'm gonna need to separate the assets. For example, in this context, it's gonna be the partisan and the gun. So what I'm gonna do is lasso tool it, make a outline of it, and I hope it's good. And now you can include extra areas in the outline, just as long as it's empty space and not parts of the first asset. I think that, I think that works. Then Control Alt G to make a clipping mask, so it still stays in the same area, but the asset itself stays in. know, so it doesn't spill, so to speak. There we go. I almost forgot to do that, so just keep shading. Really, it's not that hard. Now, yeah, if you want to be more finer about it, just use a smudge tool with 40% strength and 0% hardness, and then drag away or like drag back depending on the parts you wanna adjust. It's way easier to use than just erasing the stuff, really. Now, I forgot to say this, but the reason why I have the asset in the folders of when you start shading, it can actually overlap with the FX, which is a good actually a good thing, because when I put it in the same folder, for example, the bevel won't get erased, so it looked like the lighting is staying consistent, even though it shouldn't. I mean, uh, the lighting remains unaffected even if you shade it with the dark area, so it's gonna look weird and right next to each other. We just put that in a folder. Control Alt G again. See if there's a difference with that. Again, if you just want to adjust the shading, just smudge it. Isn't too difficult to do, really. Also, don't overshade too much. I won't be showing examples of that right now, since that would probably be in the guide for later. I think. Yeah, I think that that's good enough. Now as I said, I pre-prepped the assets I'm gonna use, so Uh, to remove the background, actually, go search up photo room on Google or whatever search engine you're using, and add in background removal, and you should get the site I'm using. I prefer using photo room because it doesn't really downsize images unless if it's like actually huge. But the limit is like 1,500 by 1,500 pixels. Now this is a thing actually that I learned from a TNO artist. How to make a good looking country bus. Hold on. Vote. Oh, don't forget to clip mask and have everything as a smart object. To readjust the size. Now you're really gonna have to fidget with the metal pattern overlay, because you want to get in like a good amount of highlights as well as shadows. Now either you can click auto contrast and that works just fine, or you can tweak it with a camera raw again. Now click dread clarity way up and dehaze not so much. And be careful of going too ham with camera raw, especially with dehaze, since it could make flat assets look crusty. I think I think that fits. Cool. Now we're gonna begin shading again. Maybe this time you can be much more loose with it, since it's a bust and not a person. Again, the lighting comes from the right, so the shadows should be on the left. Go. Again, I don't really need to shade in the highlights, because the images are typically bright enough for that. I think that looks good. I think that And I'll add the fire later, because that's a final thing that I have to add. Now, whenever you're gonna copy paste things, just make sure they're in the main folder so that the color lookups and gradient fills apply. And that's a big difference from a typical TNO as compared to Ramavash or MTM. We're more saturated when it comes to colors, but not the same as say a TFR. We have a difference. Let me camera off again. Then just don't go too crazy. Okay, group the folder by grouping the folder by pressing shift click. There we go. Then shade it again, like we did earlier. I'll be linking the guide once I finish it, so I know. Let me actually separate the skeleton from the helmet. And I accidentally clicked the object select tool. Oops. Can be, a bit lenient with it. My accent popped out. Oops. It's a bit too lenient, actually. I was just like, get a good area, and don't have to be like 100% precise. Yeah, I think that works fine. And, shade, shade, shade. Now this is an example. I'm gonna readjust the size, and we're gonna find out what's the problem with that. Now, when you resize it and you have like a split asset, it's gonna use some of its quality. So I recommend you don't do that. I mean, I don't recommend making a split asset when you're gonna still adjust the asset itself later. Anyhow, I think earlier what I was just trying to prove a point. You know, there. Hold on. I forgot to add in like slipping mask. I mean, layer link. Oops. Oh, that, I didn't mean to click on that. That would be for part 2. Anyhow, as the fire PNG. There we go. I'll be teaching the way to make fire look good in a bit later, once I add in all the other assets. Anyhow. If ever you just need to adjust the canvas size, like if it's ever too small, just go over here, pixels, and my hard limit personally for small frames is like around this large, but it depends on the mod you're working on. Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna add in my final asset, which is the hourglass. This is a rework of a Nikon that I'm doing right now, so no, should be. There we go. Don't forget to set them as smart objects. I've said that 1,000 times in the video already, but really important because you know you don't wanna keep it as just like a plain image because you won't be able to readjust the effects later if you have to. So it's a bit too much. Okay. You just don't go ham on dehaze, and typically clarity should be higher than texture. Hey, I'm gonna put this as black and white. The shortcut is Control Shift B and Control Alt Shift B, like that. Now, draw it like this. Um, I'm already fine with how the asset is laid out in the composition, so I don't really mind making split assets. In fact, in fact, not my best looking icon if I was being honest, but it's good. Good enough. And I think that works fine. Wait, no. There we go. Now, we're gonna go do the fire effects. What I typically do, first thing is, you should actually have it on top. That's my mistake. For a thing we're gonna do later, we're gonna have to waste it, actually. Go. Now, J, it's time with no layer mask. Gonna add in a bunch of radial blur. I learned this from my good friend Tal. So you're gonna click it on zoom, then raise the amount a bit, then set it as soft light, or hard light, soft light, anything you'd prefer. Do it multiple times. See, and it's already looking quite promising. Now there would be spill on it, which is a problem if I was being honest, so just erase it. There you go. I'm gonna add in a orange gradient map. Oops. Orange gradient map to the icon. And select a dark red and a bright orange. So it's accurate. That set it as, yeah, I think hopefully it works. Then Control I first layer mask. Then draw on the edges of the icon. Now you can change the opacity and flow, but I typically like to do it like how I showed anyhow. Go. Don't. I think that's looking quite nice actually. Now, there's. There you go. If you wanted to, be less solid, you can just feather it a bit. Let's say, I don't know, 2.5 pixels seems good. So it doesn't look too solid, it looks more natural. But that won't be the last thing that we're gonna do. Now, what you want to do if you're gonna make fire, you have to select a very light and almost non-saturated color and draw on the edges of your assets. So like that. You can see it's gonna give like a glow effect to it that looks very nice. And you have to do it individually. You cannot draw it all on one filter. Smudge. Now let's do it for the country asset now. As you can see, it gives like a nice glow effect, like I said. Oh, let me add in more Collin to the bust. I think it's coming along well, I'd say so. Oh, I forgot to do something. I also want to play a bit of camera around to the fire effect, but not so much, just make it, stylized. And since this is still TNO, you shouldn't be too saturated. Hmm. We'll do it for I think I'm gonna adjust it a bit far from hold on. Add in a layer link. Then you can move the layer freely. Just so I could have the skull closer to justify it having a thing. Anyhow. There we go. No. Oopsie daisy. Brush. Just color on the edges, just ever so slightly. Then color in with the gradient now. Hmm. Not bad, not bad. Actually, should not be too exposed to fire because it will look weird. I'm just testing it out. I think that works, yeah. This is, the end of part 1 for my TNO icon guide. If you want to get VFX, let me put them on screen right now. But I'll be linking stuff on the drive anyway. In the bevel and emboss, in the glow, drop shot. This probably isn't base TNO style, because the bevel and the inner glow would be way too much than a typical TNO icon, plus we don't use lighting effects, but that should be it. Yeah. I'll be making part 2 of the icon guide. This time it would be frameless instead of having a frame. I'll probably upload that sometime soon.